Hello, I'm Elaine Slatter, host of the Fabulous Fempreneurship podcast show. In this special series, we are interviewing the authors of an exciting new book, 8 Qualities of Great Leadership, the critical elements for now and future success, to get the authors' in-depth thoughts on the chapter that they've written. So today's guest is Trevor Stockwell, coach, trainer, and mentor, and author of the chapter on self-leadership. So welcome to our show, Trevor.
Hi, Elaine. Thanks for having me. It's great to chat.
Yeah, it really is. We've been collaborating on this book together with you, Kai. So it's very exciting for me to do my first interview with you. So first of all, could you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of background and education and experience in self-leadership?
Sure. Yeah. So I was thinking back sort of when I was pulling together the chapter for the book, I was thinking back more about how long I've actually been interested in leadership as a subject. And it's been, without giving away my age, it's been a few decades. Yeah, definitely. And I think the self-leadership aspect kind of grew as I was learning more about leadership. I was looking at other leaders as well, and eventually sort of gradually realized that even back when I was a teenager, I sort of formed a few rock bands and things. Never got
Rock
famous.
bands.
Yeah, absolutely. Never got famous. So yeah, never even heard of them. But yeah, and just in that I used to sort of, I realized I was leading the bands, I was sort of taking it forward. I had the vision for the band more than a lot of the other members. I'm not sure that points to really great leadership at that point if I never became famous. But I think it's, yeah, start of the learning process was growing as a leader, really. And then literally started working, volunteering for a non-profit, and realized that I was sort of attracting responsibility without necessarily looking for it. And then got to the point where I was helping to lead a team. And that's really when I started to dig into, right, I need to develop my leadership skills further, and started studying it more through sort of John Maxwell's materials and things like that. So that's kind of way back. And then more recently, joined the Maxwell leadership team. That's how I trained to be a coach. And then sort of since then I've sort of specifically worked with coaches to develop my own leadership journey even more. And also then use those skills and experience to help others.
So your formal training is the John Maxwell leadership training and a certified coach, right?
Yep. Yeah, along with sort of a lot of on the job stuff through different roles I've had, either voluntary or in the corporate side of things. I've been a systems manager for many years, so it was a mix of sort of leading and training people, and also the process side of things. I think if you can get good processes and people understanding them and skilled well enough to use them, the two really work well together. That's where you really get results. I think if you've got great processes, but the people either aren't motivated to follow through on the processes or aren't clear of what the processes are, it's going to fall apart. Likewise, you've got great people that are motivated, but there's no formal process for them to follow or develop, then yeah, we fall over that side as well. So I think you need both of those aspects to it. And in some ways, I've sort of learned that my strengths generally work in those areas quite well, which is why I do what I do now, I suppose.
Yeah, you're very good at what you do, that's for sure. So, what kind of experiences have you had in self-leadership that are relevant to our business owner audience?
I think it really, in lots of ways, once you start leading a team, and I've done sort of over quite a period of time, probably 10, 15 years, I've been involved leading different sorts of teams. A lot of the time, teams of volunteers, which can add an extra challenge because
Yes.
they're not paid to be there. If they're invested in the vision of the organization, then that helps to motivate them sort of to turn up. But then it's engaging with them, helping them find their place where their strengths work well, but also then making sure that you communicate well enough what they need to do, the bigger picture of the whole sort of why you're doing what you're doing. How does that fit in the grand scheme of things, as well? So I think in some ways, working with other people is always good, because you understand more about them, but also it helps you understand more about yourself. And I think it sort of, from my own journey and also working with other coaches, I coach coaches a lot of the time as well. And I've sort of realized that developing the self-leadership aspect really is the game changer. You can lead teams well without focusing on that. To some extent, you might see success for a while, but eventually, if you don't deal with the stuff inside and how well you're growing yourself, it's all going to fall apart eventually. So rather than get to that point, the ideal really is working on both developing your own skills, how you turn up, how you interact with people, and then helping others to do the same as well.
So you weren't an overnight success. What you're saying here is that you've grown over time, as you've developed your self-leadership skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for those that have been in the leadership space a long time and aware of John Maxwell, I think when he first brought out Developing the Leader Within You, which he's since revised, released again, that was the first real book of his that I started reading. I think it was when I first started leading a team, when I had the responsibility to lead others. It was like, okay, I can either pull on the experiences I've had, or I can actually get a little bit more input and insight from other people that are further down the road than me, and then start to put into practice what I'm learning with the team that I was leading. So yeah, it's unfortunate you can't do it overnight. If I could work out a way of packaging that and helping people, then I'd be a millionaire, wouldn't I?
But I think it's being open to learning, like you did from the John Maxwell program, and then implementing those thoughts as you develop your self-leadership, because you do need to practice what you've read, right, and what you've learned. Otherwise, it just goes in the bin and you don't do anything with it. But I think that's the key is to get the formal training or learning or reading, and then put it into practice every day that you're being a team leader, because you do have to work at it, because not every member of your team is either on the same page as you or has the same personality as you. So there's a lot of complex issues in leadership. And if you, as you say, if you don't know yourself and your own strengths and weaknesses, you don't know how to guide the team and bring out the best in the team, because you don't know yourself either, if you don't know yourself. So it's a very interesting topic, and I was really excited to find out that your chapter is going to be the very first chapter, because I really believe that self-leadership, just as you did, is so important before you. The biggest quality actually of self-leadership that you need to start with before you go on to any of the other areas, because if you're growing a business, you're going to have a team. So if you don't understand the self-leadership aspect, it's not going to bode very well for the future if you're growing a team from, like 2 to 5, or whether it's your own team or whether it's a team of contractors. It's still a team, right? And you need different skill sets to manage different kinds of teams, whether they're in-person teams or remote teams. And I think that's a lot of what we're working with today, is that hybrid workplace, which is, prior to the pandemic wasn't such an issue. We didn't have to grapple with it the same way that we do now. So that adds another dimension, I think, to leadership.
Yeah, it's a lot more in some ways short-term relationships if people are on shorter contracts. The good old days of job for life
That's right.
quite a while back, didn't they? So
yes,
it's a lot more transient workforce.
Definitely. So what would you say is the first skill that business owners need when it comes to self-leadership?
I think the first one, there's many different elements, but I think the key one really is developing a greater level of insight, personal insight, or self-awareness. In some ways, like you hear the word self-awareness, like, well, I know who I am. Everyone's aware of themselves to some extent, but it's like, yeah, but if you peel back the layers of who you think you are, how honest are you with yourself? That's one aspect. I mean, on the chapter sort of mentioned three specific areas and they interlink. So insight, which is self-awareness, clarity and flexibility as well. They can all work together. But I think developing self-awareness to the point where you're growing and you're keeping that to some extent on the radar of your intentions and your attention. I think it's key. I think particularly within business, but also in any area of life. I know from my perspective, I can lead myself better at times than at others. And sometimes I give myself too much slack and sort of just take my foot off the pedal too much, when actually deep down that's becoming frustrating because I want to achieve more. There's certain things I can do. I know I can help other people and I can do this, and this. I'm a very active person, so I like to get involved with things. And sometimes it's just checking in, actually, how well am I doing based on my intentions? It's like we can judge other people by their actions, but we judge ourselves more by our intentions, don't we? And it's like, yeah, but how is that translated into what I'm doing at this moment or with the team or whatever the scenario might be? And it really is just, I suppose, getting the balance of how aware you become of your own actions and how well, like one of the questions I challenge myself quite regularly with is, how well am I leading myself now, just at this point in time? Could I actually lead myself better? So could I be more focused in a certain area, be more prioritized in a certain area? Or maybe the flip side of that, do I need to take time out and relax a little bit more and get a fresh perspective? So I think, yeah, knowing who we are and where we are at any point in time is such a key skill to navigate and develop and help that become part of our lifestyle, really, rather than look at it as, okay, leadership is a business function or a corporate thing, and when I'm at work or when I'm around the team I need to focus on leadership and all the rest of the time I don't. It's like, no, but just from your own fulfillment, your own satisfaction, how could you improve how you come across, how you communicate, how you think about things, as well, and how you prioritize and that. So it's a big topic. Lots of different sort of things work together, but I think it really is, if you start with self-awareness, you realize where you are, you help discover things about you or things within you that you'd like to achieve that maybe you put off for one reason or another, and think, 5 years from now I'll have more time, I'll have more money, I'll have more whatever. I'll look at it then. And a lot of the times, if we're not intentional and aware of where we are and what we're doing now, 5 years will come and we'll actually be in a very similar place to where we are now. So yeah.
So really it's a life skill, not just a business skill, it's a life skill as well.
Yeah, because until we're more aware of a particular area that we either want to develop or change, we're not going to take action. We're not going to be intentional about it.
So why do you think that's the most important skill? Is it because of that? Like, it's a life skill rather than a business skill? It's not one or the other, it's both.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think like our inner world really is what creates the outer world that we experience, that we interact with. And I think if we're not developing enough of the awareness of inside, then our behaviors, our responses to certain things are going to be more automatic. And they're not necessarily creating the results that we want. I think once we're more aware of the process that we go through, the feelings that we're experiencing that then determine the behaviors, that get the results. It's there's like a loop that will just keep going
Right.
round unless we intentionally change something, and unless we're aware of an area that we want to change, we just keep getting the same results. As frustrating as that can be for us, but also for other people around. If I'm not leading a team particularly well, they'll get frustrated. They'll not be as productive as they can be. Nobody wins from that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the best way to develop this skill?
I think, and this is going to sound slightly biased because of my journey, really. The best and most efficient way is to work with a coach, is to work with somebody else that has expertise and insights that can just speed the process up for you. It's not absolutely essential, and I'll come into that in a moment. But I think just from my experience of being coached, I've realized that, the times before I started working with a coach, my progress was good when I was more intentional about it. But when you've got sort of external accountability, it helps you to stay sharp, it helps you prioritize certain things. Again, it helps us avoid the excuse of, well, I don't feel like it now, I'll put it off, I'll do it in a couple of weeks' time. You're in exactly the same place. So there's the objective sort of input that they can provide from being a different viewer of what you're saying and communicating. There's the accountability aspects that they give as well. But also, a coach is actually for you, for your success. They're working with you. They don't have their own agenda, really. It is all about, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to focus on? And how can we work together? So having someone that can listen to you as you try and explain where you are and where you want to go, and part of that discovery process, it's confidential as well. There's no judgment in it. There's no right or wrong answers in some ways. It's more of, where are you? Where do you want to get to? And what are the things that you feel are holding you back, or the things that will help move you on in that direction the quickest way possible. But having said that, if you're not ready or willing or focused on working with a coach, it doesn't mean you can't develop your own self-leadership. Definitely not. There's a time, I think, to partner with a coach. And if you're not there yet, or you just think, no, I've tried that, it didn't really work for me, get someone that has your best interests at heart. So a close friend, a relative, someone that will happily listen to what you want to say, that will maybe challenge you as well and pull you up on certain attitudes or ideas or things that you might be saying. And then just start asking questions. I think the key to discovery with anything in life is asking the right questions. So it's not just about asking any questions, but it's being honest with yourself and just take stock of, okay, where am I now? Where would I like to be? Or who am I now? Who would I like to be? And it's starting to sort of explore those answers. And if you're answering them, I'm thinking, yep, I don't think I can change at all, I think I've nailed it, then you've got to be honest with yourself, and hopefully the person you're chatting with will slap you around the face and say, sure you can't improve it anywhere. So it really is about, I think, honesty as well, and not allowing the excuses that we often make ourselves to be the things that determine our actions. Yeah.
And we have to know how we're wired, right? And you use the DISC method when,
yes.
So could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I don't dig into it in the chapter so much, but it's really, I'm fascinated by people as well. I like to understand people. I'm one of those people that if I sit in an airport and wait for a plane, I will people watch, not in a scary way, not in a creepy way, but just in a curious way. So the DISC aspect, the DISC personality, is one of, a plethora of different personality tests, ways you can find out more of how you're wired, how you would naturally respond in a scenario, what's your most comfortable response, or when you're really under pressure, what are the sort of behaviors that you exhibit. And I particularly like the DISC assessment done through Maxwell Leadership, because there's the leadership aspect, and it gives you, the report will give you sort of details on your strengths within certain leadership behaviors as well. So I think just the whole thing of finding out how you're wired is very liberating, because you realize you're not like everybody else, and that's fine. And yet there are a lot of similarities. So although there's, like, DISC uses 4 different personality styles, and we are all sort of blends within those 4 styles, and certain ones we will exhibit more than others.
Yeah, I was
Without
gonna say
getting
that.
too much into the detail of that now, because I could talk about that for hours, but I
Yeah.
won't. But it just gives you really good insight with regards to, okay, so this is how I prefer to communicate, and this is how I would prefer to be communicated to. So you can sort of like allow all of that to inform the discovery of who you are and how well you currently sort of operate within the natural strengths of your personality, and how many times you actually feel, I can't be myself in this situation or in this situation because X, Y, Z, whatever the answers might be. So really useful from that perspective.
So how long does it take after you've gone through this process of self-leadership to, get results? Like a month, a week, a day? Like, how long does it take to see the results of, starting to work on self-leadership?
I think it can, in some ways it's different for different people. We're all on a journey of discovery anyway, to some extent, I think. I think a lot of it factors around how intentional you are about being consistent. So if maybe people listen to this podcast think, yeah, it was a really good discussion, I'm going to sit and think about where I am with regards to my self-awareness, my self-leadership at this point. And then sort of 5-10 minutes goes by, and then they never think of it again. You're not going to get any real benefit from that. I think it's developing a conversation with, as I say, a coach, a friend, or someone outside yourself, a lot of the time, that will just start to focus on 1 or 2 areas initially, and then you build from there. So you can start to see results straight away, but I think the longer you are consistent, and it, as we said, becomes more of a lifestyle of discovery, then that's when you really see sort of like big results. It's exponential, really. I think the longer you walk the journey of personal growth and self-discovery, the more you grow, the more results you see, and then that in itself is very motivating to keep growing, to keep looking for new ways to sort of improve. So I would say initially you can start to get momentum straight away, but the consistency is where you really see the results from a long-term perspective.
So what if you get stuck? How do you get unstuck? Like, you might start out and then you kind of, get a little bit lost.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think a lot of the time, the quickest way, or one of the easiest ways to just check where you are, is have a few self-coaching questions that you just run past yourself. So as I mentioned earlier, like one of the questions I ask myself is, how well am I leading myself now? But other aspects would be, just look at your life where you are now, how you're feeling, the things you've achieved, the things that, around you. Would you define that as that's successful, or I am fulfilled at this point with everything that's around me? Or do you actually feel, no, I've not hit what I'd like to hit, I've not achieved what I want to achieve, and let whatever the responses to those things are be the trigger to then discover and focus a little bit more on getting unstuck from developing and thinking about your awareness more, and just sort of check in regularly, really, I would say, and mix that with getting sort of accountability from a friend or a family member as well.
Perfect. So what would you say is the second critical self-leadership skill that every business owner should have?
I would say kind of linked to the first one is more your awareness of how well you interact with other people. How well are you communicating to maybe your team, your department, or your family if it's outside of work context as well? How aware are you of their motivations, their dreams, goals as well? One of the pitfalls, if you care too much about self-leadership in an unbalanced way, you can think it's all about developing you so that you achieve everything you want to achieve and life's perfect. But I think it's very limited if you stay there. I think we should grow as ourselves the best that we can to be better leaders for other people, to help develop them. I think that's really where it works. I grow best under other leaders that are helping to develop me. I've experienced that firsthand. And I know that from my perspective, when I'm developing other people, I feel a lot more fulfilled, and I find it a lot more rewarding. But it's also from an organizational business perspective, the legacy is you're developing other people for succession, but also just from a relational perspective. If you're just living for yourself, getting everything you can from people, it's very destructive, I would say.
I
Nobody
agree.
wants to be around people like that. And I think we've missed the point if we stop there.
Yeah, because I think one of the greatest legacies in business is to help your team grow. Because actually, if you help your team grow, they're going to be happier. You're going to retain your staff a lot longer. Because most people quit a job, not for the pay, believe it or not, but they don't like the culture of the business. And that starts with the leader, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have the right culture and you're not helping them build their own career, then they're going to leave. So it's a very critical aspect that you're not just focusing self-leadership on you, that you're doing exactly what you said. You're helping the team grow and helping other people grow. One, you're getting more satisfaction out of that. And two, your business is going to benefit from that. Because, people, if they feel motivated and that you have their best interest at heart, they're actually going to work harder for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say, please work harder. They're going to automatically work harder because they love working for you as a leader.
Yeah.
I'm definitely have found that in my corporate career that if you had a good leader, you go to the end of the world almost to get done what they want to get done. Because you admire them and you respect them and you want to do your best. I think that's part of human nature.
Yeah. And
right?
that's the culture that if we build that within teams, organizations, you get exponential returns all around. Everyone feels more productive, everyone feels more motivated, as you say. And the sky's the limit really on what you can achieve together.
And I think a lot of leaders completely miss that part. And Elon Musk is a great example of a leader who sees it through a very narrow perspective, which is his own perspective. And it kind of blew up on him when he purchased Twitter. And I'm not sure in this day and age if he'll ever recover from that situation. Yes, you'll always have people working at Twitter and Tesla, but how motivated are they? And do they really want to work for that kind of leader? It puts a big question mark there, I think, in my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
So this second critical leadership skill, why is this skill so important? I think we've covered some of it, but would you like to elaborate a little bit more?
I think, how would you answer the question, would I follow me? So if you weren't you, would you follow you? To me, again, it's one of those questions that I hold myself accountable to. just from the perspective, because otherwise you never put yourself in other people's shoes, and therefore you don't see from their perspective, and therefore, the world revolves around you again, and we're back to the same problem. So I think it's stop and ask yourself that fairly regularly. The other side of that is, if you're part of a team, it's like, ask yourself the question, okay, would I be recruited for this team again? Have I changed since I was recruited to the way that I now add more value, or am I just sort of becoming a negative influence on the team? So it comes back to honesty, doesn't it? If we're honest with ourselves, we'll ask the hard questions, and then we'll, what we do with the response again is determined by how well we want to lead ourselves, really.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you develop this skill?
I think with regards to this aspect, you do need external input. You can only kind of guess a lot of how you think you come across yourself. That's quite limited. In an ideal world, you will have already sort of been nurturing a good environment within your team, within your companies, where people can be honest with you. People will give you honest feedback without fearing that their potential raise is at risk if they challenge you on something. And that can take time. To a certain extent, you need to show a level of vulnerability at times. You need to show people that you're human as well, and you're trying to do the best for everybody with regards to the pressures that are coming on you and the decisions you need to make. But I think the key input really is other people, honest feedback that will just say, actually, you're really good at this, but at this aspect, you're just, from a scale of 1 to 10, you're a 3, and you need to raise that to 7. And I think if we're on the growth journey ourselves, we'll happily hear that without responding in a negative way, and we'll actually start to make changes to help improve ourselves and then the health of the team as well. And within a family context, it's the same, isn't it? Can you have the honest conversations either with your children or your spouse to say, what are the areas? I think I know the areas I'm good at, but what are the areas am I not so good at? Because we've all got blind spots, haven't we? We've all got things that we don't realize is detrimental to other people. So I think, getting other people. And I suppose the other side of that is, can you be a person that can give honest feedback as well? Are you secure with who you are as a perspective from your own person and your own leadership perspective, that you can give honest feedback to other people rather than the answers that you think they want to hear, because that's not really going to help anybody in the long term.
And one of the biggest skills, I think, in self-leadership is listening, because you have to listen to that feedback, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And take that in and take it on board. And sometimes that's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a danger sort of within leadership circles where it's like, right, we need to get engagement from the staff, from the team. We need to get input, regular input. But then if you're not acting or acknowledging it to some extent, doesn't mean you have to necessarily do everything that they say, but acknowledging it and communicating in a positive way, that even if you're not necessarily going to change this, this, and this, you've considered it, and these are the valid reasons why we're not, but we're actually going to do this and this, and take on board sort of a lot of what you said. If it just becomes, a tick box exercise, people just disengage, you're not going to get the responses that you want. And again, how many companies know that have sort of gone through that and are still where they are, really?
You definitely have to take the action. I remember when we went through this in my corporate career, we went through this whole leadership thing. And in the round table, one of the criticisms of me, well, not critical in the sense of very negative, it was just pointing out that I was very quick to solve a team manager's problem. Like, they come with a problem and I just say, well, do this and that and this and that. They really weren't asking me to give them that advice. They wanted more for me to hear them out on what they proposed. So then I got thinking, yeah, that's true. Because I'd done their role before, I'd been in that role before, I knew how to solve the problem, but that wasn't helping them at all. They wanted a sounding board in me. And therefore, if I could help them with that, then when they really had a critical question that they couldn't figure out, they would come to me. So I thought I was helping them, but I wasn't. I was not helping them grow. So I stepped back and let them do it their way. And it was a much better result because they became a stronger leader because they were working things out. And then they felt comfortable enough that they could come to me at the end and say, look, I've tried this, I've done that, but I'm really stuck on this. What would you suggest? So it was a whole different way of working with the manager. And once I realized that, I thought, well, this is to their benefit for sure. And it's to my benefit too, because they were solving their own problems.
Yeah.
It was a great learning curve for me to get that feedback and to act on the feedback. So I love that part of it. To develop that skill, you have to, be open and willing to hear the feedback from the team. And then step number 2 is putting it into practice, what they've recommended or what they've said, not just pushing it aside and say, we'll talk about it in 30 days or 2 weeks or whatever, and really just pushing it around and not really addressing it. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah.
So how long does it take to get started on this particular aspect of self-leadership?
I would say it depends how healthy your sort of team environment is. If you're going to sort of seek feedback from team members directly, you could start with immediate family members, because chances are that, the areas where I'm not good at work are probably showing up at home as well. And actually, if you sort the home stuff out, if you do that first, then maybe the work stuff will actually be a lot easier. We have a lot more accountability to our immediate family than team members, in the sense, from lots of different reasons. But the priority really is to get it right with our closest relationships, and then the outworking is the byproducts with everybody else as well. So I would say as soon as you can start having a conversation, maybe pick your moment. If you're chatting with somebody that's under pressure, you're not going to get the best response straight away, but pick a time where you can just set aside distractions, have a proper conversation, and maybe start by communicating why you're asking them for feedback as well. Let them realize that you're actually trying to discover more about how you can act, behave, think better. Then I think they'll be more open to giving you honest feedback as well. And again, you have to have a certain level of self-confidence, self-esteem as well, to take hearing the bad stuff, because we've all got stuff that we need to improve on. And I think if we're not ready to hear that, then we should focus more on building our confidence first, and getting to that point where we can hear it really.
I totally agree with you there. So if you get stuck on this one, what would you do?
I would say if you get stuck on it now, particularly if you've heard a discussion like this, I think it's more that you've either stopped being intentional about discovering more of yourself, and how you communicate. There is the danger that when things get busy, we sort of park the growth stuff, and we just do the essentials of hitting the figures, getting the stuff out the door, whatever targets might be. And then it's so easy to get back into the autopilot responses where, we just do the same thing. The learned behaviors are the things that are evident. And we're not looking to change or to see how we can change. So I think it's probably that, if you're stuck, or it's just at the point where maybe you're not being honest with yourself or honest with others, that you actually do, or you've not demonstrated that you do want to learn for the purpose of changing. I think they're the two key aspects. If you're not in either of those side of things, I think the whole sort of discovery thing touches back to what we said earlier about just staying consistent. Give it a bit of time regularly to explore a bit further and to think about the answers that you're getting from people as well.
Yeah, very good point. So what would you say the third skill is that business owners need to develop in the area of self-leadership?
I would say the third point really links in lots of ways to the first two things we've discussed about developing our own personal insight or self-awareness, and then how we come across and respond with others. By developing check-in points or review points, I've sort of touched on this already, but I think, and this is an area that I sort of learned and have struggled with to some extent, because I don't find this to be a natural thing that I enjoy doing. Because I like moving forward, I like doing things. Pausing and looking back to then look forward better, to me, I see the value in it, but there's a challenge. So I think just developing a certain level of review point, so it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. I think if you try and spend too much time on it, you'll lose motivation as well. But just review, okay, I really wanted to develop and work on this aspect. So maybe I wanted to improve my listening skills. Over the last week, would I say that I've actually become a better listener? Could I give an example where actually I understood and heard something someone said better because I listened? You know, am I not doing something else while someone's talking? Am I giving my undivided attention? Things like that. And just review where you are to see that, you know, you are making progress, or if you're not, what could you actually do differently? So am I asking for lots of feedback from people and then just putting it, you know, in a folder somewhere, and I've not looked at it since? Am I actually accomplishing some of the things that I'd like to accomplish that I set out, you know, in my growth journey or within the organization as well? And so I think it's just checking in regularly sort of throughout the day, and then just having review points at the end of the week, the end of the month, however you want to do it.
Yeah.
And just, yeah, it helps to keep you sharp, and it helps to develop that as it's a lifestyle. It's part of my life, the bigger picture, rather than it just be an activity or a job that I have to do every now and again. It's like, no, I think the more we actually learn and start the growth process intentionally, I think the more we enjoy it, because we want to discover things about ourselves. We want to become a better person generally. Unless you've had a lot of sort of trauma and different abusive situations that have, you know, damaged your self-image. Everybody wants to grow and become a better person, I think. So I think it really is, it's almost like a dopamine hit, that as you start to grow, you see more potential, and then that can be motivating as well.
And you can't fix everything at once. Like if there's a lot of things you need to work on, is your suggestion that you kind of do one at a time so that you're intentional about it?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a danger if maybe maybe you get feedback from your team with sort of 20 different things that you need to change. In
That's
some ways,
the
that's
worst
good.
case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. But if they give you that much, that's positive, but don't get overwhelmed. And it's like, you know, it's like anything. It takes a process of time for growth and for change to happen. I think it's more identify the most critical thing that you need to or want to change. What's giving you the most pain, what's hindering you the most, that, you know, within your team or whatever, and focus on that. And all the other things, once you start working on one area, I've found it then becomes easier to work on the other areas, because you grow as a person, you get more motivated, and you actually think, yeah, this is doable, I can do this. But yeah, as you say, don't try and do it all at once.
So if the whole team says you're a lousy listener, then that's the thing that you start with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the feedback from a team, that's why it's so important, because you can take that feedback and then sort of a scale of 1 to 10, what's the most important thing for you as a person to work on first, and then gradually go through the list. And as you say, it's not a one and done. You're not going to see it today and have it fixed tomorrow. It's an ongoing process that you have to keep working on until it becomes a natural part of your self-leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other aspect is like life is constantly changing, isn't it? Like, the influences, the stimuli, the pressures around from one moment to the other can change for us, and also for the lives of the people that we lead as well. So just keeping that awareness of needing to sort of review and adapt as we go, I think is huge. Stands in a good stead if we do that.
Well, we have a great example, having gone through almost 3 years of COVID. It's changed everybody's lives in their personal lives and in their work life. And so this is a big change to navigate, I'd say, in the next 2 or 3 years, because people aren't the same coming out of this COVID period than they were before, when there was no COVID. And I think that has to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. And, hopefully it's not the case, but who knows what's just around the corner that could affect everybody on the planet again. There's different things, isn't there, that happen that we can't predict or control. The key thing is control what you can, isn't it? You can control your own behavior, your own thinking. I think focus more on that, and the rest of it is easier to navigate.
So are there any tools or websites or apps that can make it easier in this area of self-leadership?
I would say depends how you want to do it and how you're wired. I always think life's better with a spreadsheet or two on the go, just to track stuff, record stuff. That's just me. That's part of how I'm wired. There are coaching apps. So some of the people that I work with, you can put habit trackers on coaching apps and things like that. It depends really on the area you want to focus on. So if from a time management perspective, maybe you think, actually, I could be sharper with my time. One tool that I use, every now and again, I will just assess and break down and record how I spend my days. So maybe like for 3-month period, I'll log every day. And now this sounds quite detailed to some people. Some people just aren't wired to do it that way at all, and that's fine. But I will track under several different categories. How much time did I spend today on personal growth? How much time do I spend with family? How much time do I spend on self-care or on work? Whatever you decide is valuable and your time. And then literally, like, from a day-to-day basis, you probably don't realize it. But if you look back over a 3-month period and you just break down, okay, of the hours that I was awake, X% was spent on personal growth. Is that a good number compared to, did you spend more time watching TV than with your family or something like that? And it's again, data. If data's accurate, it can help inform decisions that we make. So that's just a simple tool that I've sort of developed and used. Some of the clients use it, some sort of struggle with the detail of it. So it's just like, we'll just tweak what works for you.
Some people do journaling.
Yeah. I think somehow you have to make notes of something you want to track. Otherwise it just becomes, I can't remember. I think I said I'd do that, and then nothing happens. So everyone that I coach will definitely, when they set an action, they will definitely record it. They will be specific about it and repeat back to me what I think they've said and committed to. And that's then what you use to see progress. If you're not clear with certain things, like if you don't know where you want to aim, then you're not going to know when you get there, really.
No.
So you have to track it somehow.
Exactly. So how long does it take to get started in this area?
I would say you could start as soon as you finish the podcast, literally just by reviewing, the last 7 days. Have you had a good last 7 days? How have you felt most of it? Would you say it's been successful? Of all the things you wanted to achieve, did you hit 1 or 2 of them? Did you achieve everything you wanted to do? So you can literally start straight away. One of the things I do, again, it's a spreadsheet focus. I list at the end of the week, or by the end of the week, I review the accomplishments that I've done throughout that week. So I'll either jot them down as I do them, or I look back at the calendar, certain events and appointments I've had, and just track then over the week, did I do well? Did I achieve what I wanted to do? Then that part informs my quarterly review. So I spend a little bit of time every 3 months just looking back on the quarter, which helps to inform changes that I want to make going forwards. So it really is, you can start where you are, start small, and then however it works for you, develop it in a way that is sort of sustainable for you. If you really don't like spreadsheets or tracking stuff, you'll find a way that works for you, really.
Yeah, because
Yeah, so I would say
if you don't do the way that works for you, then you're just going to abandon it in a few weeks. So, if you're not a spreadsheet person and you keep trying to do it that way, it's not going to work for you. You're better off to find a different method. You can report it, just talk it. You can write it by journaling it, or as you said, use a spreadsheet if that's or one of the apps as you mentioned. But yeah, you're right. You have to do it the way that works for you, or it won't be sustainable in the future. Yeah. So are there any other skills that we haven't mentioned yet that we should be mentioning?
There's lots that we could talk about. Yeah, definitely. I think there are many elements when it comes to self-leadership, when it comes to life in general, behavior, thinking, and all of those aspects that they all interlink. I think emotional intelligence is key. I know Kylie has written a chapter in the book as well, which is really good. But linked to emotional intelligence is what you focus on, time management, self-care, whether you're setting goals, all of those sort of different elements all require certain skills to be developed. And again, it's partly how you want to express them as an individual, how you want to focus on certain bits and prioritize other bits first. So I think it's a myriad of a lot of different things, but I think as you start the process of discovery, it becomes more evident to you of, okay, maybe I'm not so bad at that, but I really need to work on goal setting, or I need to work on my mindset, because one minute I feel great, the next minute I feel really bad, or I feel negative. More often I'm a negative influence to the team, something like that. If that's coming up in your awareness, then it's like that's the thing to focus on next. Then you get the most benefit from it all round. So
what about mindset going into this? If you're looking at self-leadership, what's the best mindset to get started that business owners should have going into it? I mean, you got to have the right mindset going into it, or you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. I think it's a mix of several different aspects, in the sense of you have to approach it from the point of view that you can grow. I think that's the key one. If you're not at the point where you feel you can grow, then you need to work on that. What would be the reason that you would give that you couldn't grow, would be the first question I would ask, really. It's realizing that we have a lot of potential, which, unless we're intentional about tapping into it, it's going to stay dormant. Nobody else is going to really work on your potential, certainly not as well as what you could. And to some extent, they're not motivated to, and they shouldn't. It is our own personal responsibility, because at the end of the day, we get the results of our actions, and if we don't like what the results we're getting, we need to change our behaviors and our actions. And that really comes from, what are we thinking about? Do we think we can achieve things? So I think mindset from a perspective of, you can definitely improve. You can lead yourself better wherever you are. If we're honest, we can all lead ourselves better in one or two areas at least than what we currently are. Whether we want to or not is a different
Yeah.
response completely, but we have the option to do that. I think the other aspect is don't be too hard on yourself. The thing I love about developing self-leadership is you can start where you are.
Yeah.
You might have been really successful at one point, and for whatever reason, you let it slip. 10 years have gone by. You're now hearing this thinking, actually, I'm not where I was. That was really good. I enjoyed that. That's when I felt really alive. That's when I helped other people the most. I want to get back to that. You can just start where you are, start working on the critical things first. And a lot of the other aspects will just naturally become evident as well. So I think it's giving ourselves the right level of space, I suppose,
Yeah.
on the growth journey
And
without,
grace.
yes,
Grace.
yeah, absolutely.
Nobody's perfect. So we can
Yeah,
all work on ourselves and give yourself grace if you slipped,
yeah,
and you're not where you think you should be, or you're not where you were when you were the happiest. You can get there again, but you just have to be open, as you say, with the right mindset to get started again.
yeah, yeah. And there's a huge amount of resources out there, isn't there? I mean,
Mhm.
one of the benefits of being alive at this point in history is the access to so many resources that we have.
Yeah.
Obviously, that can be a challenge, and you have to balance that as well.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, there's so many different ways and people that can help in lots of different ways. So it really is just sort of taking your time, but being intentional about staying consistent, I would say, to really get the benefit from it.
Well, this has been a fantastic interview, Trevor. I've enjoyed every single minute of it. So, could you tell us a little bit about your where guests can or listeners can get hold of you, like your website and that kind of information?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. It's always good chatting with you. I love chatting about leadership. Just I learn stuff as I chat as well. And I just
Yeah.
like helping other people as well. TrevorStockwell.com is the easiest way for people to find me. I'm on certain social media platforms. Head to the website, that's the easiest way, and then from there you can find others. I haven't gone for world domination on every social media platform. Certain ones seem to work better. Partly because it all takes time
Yeah.
to really do well, doesn't it? So yeah, but people can touch base with me there if they want to.
Or on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn as well. Yes, I am there, definitely. If you send me a connection request through LinkedIn, though, mention that you've heard me on the podcast. I do ignore a lot of random cold connection requests if I don't know who you are.
That's a good tip. I always write a note why I want to connect to the person so that they know I'm not just going to spam them, selling them something within 5 minutes, the connection. I want them to know that I value their time and value and want to build a relationship. So if you write the note, then you're usually never turned down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. And that goes back to communication, doesn't it? How well do you
Mhm.
communicate with other people in a way that helps them? So yeah.
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 So that's thank you once again, Trevor, for this great interview. And so again, I'm Elaine Slatter, a podcast host of the Fabulous Fempreneurship podcast, and one of the authors of this brand new book coming out on Amazon. And we'll have the link to that in the podcast as well, so that you can either buy or book to get either the Kindle copy or a printed copy of this book coming up in the spring of 2023. So I hope you have a great day and a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon, Trevor.
Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.